All right. Who's ready to discuss doing some new things in corrections? Folks ready to dive into to breaking out of the archaic way of approaching education inside of the prison space? All right. Cool. Well, yeah, you're joining this session because you either work for a PEP program or you're representing one, or you just want to know how your program can offer these opportunities to incarcerated folks, um, with the goal of them being compensated, credit bearing, and other ways to just demonstrate the value of education in some concrete ways beyond just the inherent value of education, which is also true. But, proving that education can lead to other opportunities, which is critical for folks who have um, criminal convictions on their background. As someone who did time, I didn't see the value in education beyond just it being able to shape my worldview because I never believed that um, anybody would hire me or that I would get an opportunity to work in any capacity beyond just um, minimum wage jobs. Um, So looking at how we can connect this education to workforce and things like this is what we're here to talk about, and helping folks see that education can lead to something. And, I always say that for every one person that's in a classroom, there's 100 people on the cell block that aren't interested in college and won't ever sign up for a class. But I think once folks start to see that there's opportunities that can be had during and after incarceration and that we're proving that those people who are on the cell block that otherwise might not be interested may become interested because those myths can be debunked and we can be a part of that. So, um, so yes, we'll start to do a little workshop here where I will let Adrienne Taylor from Tennessee Higher Education Initiative introduce herself, as well as Ramieka Robinson from Goucher's Prison Education Program in Maryland introduce herself. I will then ask a handful of questions. I'll put up a Miro board, which is kind of a sticky notepad where I'll document some of their responses. And then from there, we'll open it up for discussion to talk about how we can develop strategies together to introduce these ideas and concepts to um, corrections, administration, and personnel. So, um, Adrienne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Adrienne, Director of Education Programs for THEI, Tennessee Higher Education Initiative, here in Tennessee. We are a third party support, so we're we service state facilities and colleges. So currently we're serving 6 state sites as well as 3 colleges providing associate and bachelor's degrees focusing on business.
Thank you, Adrienne. Ramika?
Hi, I am Ramieka Robinson. I am the Director of Continuing Education and Professional Advancement with the Goucher Prison Education Partnership located in Towson, Maryland, under the umbrella of Goucher College. Our students um, have access to attain a bachelor's degree um, from Goucher College in a liberal arts study. Um, Currently enrolled, we have over 130 students at 2 Maryland state facilities, Maryland Correctional Institution for Women and Maryland Correctional Institution at Jessup for men. And we have been in operation since 2012. So we're coming up on like 14 years or so. So it's exciting to be a part of this conversation. And thank you for creating space for me to share.
Thank you. And yeah, this is just exciting to see how fast this this kind of initiative is making its way across the US, and people are really interested in figuring out how to bring these opportunities to folks who are incarcerated. So again, when I was doing time, I would have never believed that this opportunity would be available, these types of opportunities. So not to just work remotely or have an internship, but to be paid uh, a fair wage for that, an industry wage. So um, and we, at the Alliance believe deeply in quality education, and we know that um, having opportunities, work-based learning opportunities are a standard um, generally in post-secondary education. And with the PEP regulations coming out, thinking about how education on the inside can be comparable to that on the outside, this is one element of the post-secondary ecosystem that's been historically unavailable to folks who are incarcerated. And it's critical for folks to see how their education can connect to something. And so these opportunities really help people actualize what their education could look like in a workplace. Um, so I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to just ask the panelists some questions. We'll do that for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to discussion. So let's see here. Can folks see the screen here? Can see it? Cool. All right, so we'll just start with some questions. So Ramieka and Adrienne, we'll talk about the benefits first. So, why did you choose to begin implementing these opportunities? Um, what value or positive outcomes were you aiming for? Um, maybe Ramieka, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. So I want to start off by saying never underestimate the power of a scholar. This idea was brought to us by, she's a graduate now. Um, she wanted to propose a internship opportunity inside. And we said, great, put it in writing, put it in a proposal. We'll check it out and see if it's something that's doable. Totally doable. Proposal blew us away. There was no way that we could deny it as a staff. Um, and we found ways to bring this opportunity inside the prison. We coordinated with Danielle Cox, who is on the call but not specifically in this room, to work around what that looks like, bringing that experience inside for students. Our hope was that it would be successful and that students would gain tools that they could use both inside and outside of the classroom to expand on the knowledge that they already had. And we brought this individual on as an intern. We were able to select one at a female's institution and two individuals at the male's facility. We brought them on as interns, but they were really an extension of our staff. They were staff members. Um, and we communicated with them in the very same way that we would communicate with each other. We delegated responsibilities and duties in the same way that we would assign them to one another. We created a culture where the students felt as if they were a part of our administrative team. Um, and reaping the rewards of that has been bountiful. We're in our second year. We're currently going through the hiring process. And so what we do is we ask students to create a cover letter and a resume with assistance from us or outside community partners if needed to prepare them for that. We review applications and then we decide on which students we want to interview. We sit down and we ask all students the same interview questions, and then we make our selection. And I think it was really tough making those selections this year because one of our current fellows reapplied, and we're trying to figure out a way to break it to him easy that we want to be able to uh, provide equitable access to this opportunity for everyone, but also bittersweet, right? Really move to know that that our student enjoyed his experience and he wants to continue that post his year, but also really frustrated that there aren't enough resources available and that this we're in the premature stages of work-based learning, education, and action, and what that looks like in our facility, not our facility, but inside the facility, and that we haven't quite figured out funding, resources, and collaborations with employers and community partners to expand on what has already been done. And so, yeah, that's how it started, and it is continuing to thrive. It's ongoing. It's our second year, as I mentioned, and I'm very privileged to be a part of this work. And when I say never underestimate the power of a scholar inside, that is a true testament of students' abilities to carry out innovative ideas, difficult tasks, when given the proper resources and tools that they need to thrive and succeed and support, right? And so, yeah, very truly honored to be a part of this mission. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Adrienne, you want to touch on the benefits and some of the outcomes you're aiming for?
Sure. I feel a lot of alignment with Ramieka. Our education in action started because of student inquiry as well. Um, from students inside THEI, we survey students at the end of each semester about what they experience with their coursework, but also what they experience through THEI's added supports. Along the way, we determined that we really needed to dig deeper. And so we ended up having a strategic alignment planning process where a facilitator was able to come in and engage with students, interview students, as well as our other partners, facility partners, college partners, and hear back. And so it really was a thing of we've heard the student inquiry verbally, but we also want to like fact check that and understand the depth and breadth of that interest. And then from there, it became now, so what do you do? I think Victoria said earlier, like if we're really about communities helping people heal, like what are you going to do? Be about it. And so our work has now become doing the work to expand, to be responsive to that student inquiry. And so in no way we have not reached the mountaintop or arrived if we don't consider that academic programming must include work-based learning. It's not enough for students to just be engrossed in the learning of it all without being afforded the opportunity to practice and to feel it in their hands. And so the value has come from the power of student voice, the power of what it is to really be about community and respond to the requests of the community. And so we had student inquiry from inside Tennessee facilities, but we were really informed by our research fellow, Matthew Cushing, who is in Maine, who reached out to THEI to partner with us. He's now been working with us for a year and a half. So from Matthew, we've been able to learn what it is like from someone states over and how they can support our alumni on the outside. And so I think he's been able to help us figure out how we're going to broach the subject here in Tennessee.
Thanks, Ramieka and Adrienne. You know, thinking about the benefits and, some of the outcomes, um, I think about people who are going through these programs and, getting different credentials and degrees, and the fact that after they complete them, sometimes they may have like 5 years left on their sentence, 10 years left on their sentence. And what are, how are we thinking about like the strategies to make sure that the education that people get while they're incarcerated doesn't become outdated by the time they're released because they haven't had an opportunity to engage that education in any meaningful way once they finish, you know, their program. How can these opportunities kind of address that gap?
I, I think a continuation of access to a combination of a few and if not more things, internship opportunities, fellowship opportunities. We all know that these type of opportunities are um, chances to be able to um, learn um, without fear of being overly judged or judged in a way. Very encouraged to make mistakes because that is where the learning also happens. So creating those opportunities during and after incarceration is important. And then also just highlighting the access to technology and what that means today. Um, that starts from inside, right? There's a severe learning curve post release when students are coming home and trying to navigate reentry and trying to navigate, just life and grasp all the things that have evolved around them since they have been released. And then to throw something as um, tedious as technology on top of it can be quite intimidating and overwhelming, and so I think there needs to be more robust opportunities for students to tap into to technology um, and programming around technology, but also being paid to do those things. um, So, and then lastly, if there was a way to build in these type of opportunities, but then paid opportunities to pursue some of these um, options, but also placing a job placement aspect to the end of the experience. And so that way we're doing the work on the back end to communicate and partner with community partners, second chance employers that are looking to hire incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. We're able to essentially guarantee them job placement as they grow and as they learn throughout their process.
I will add, yes, the digital equity piece. I think the guide does great work explaining the usefulness around digital equity. Something we've been thinking about in Tennessee. We do have access with technology for our students, but that is for currently enrolled students. And so we can talk about providing work-based learning opportunities and connecting them to a class and whatnot. But what does happen for those folks who graduate when technology access to the lab, the schedule changes and you can no longer access? And so I think now the strategy becomes how do we continue the conversation about how graduates inform
Mhm.
um, the current college going culture, how they inform that, how they add flavor and color to what is college and prison. And in order for that to continue to expand and improve, we have to create programming that is centered around graduates,
Mhm.
so that they might be able to retain their access to technology, but also so that we can continue the guide talks about work-based learning. Yes, it gives people meaningful experiences with work, but it also improves academic success. And so I think that is a major talking point when talking around data and retention, completion numbers.
I appreciate that. And just for the record, can you share with folks how much the interns and, student workers are getting paid at your programs?
Sure. For our partnership with the fellow who is at Maine, THEI, we pay them $25 for their work. And
Yeah.
as a fellow.
Yeah.
Um, and he has been working with us for a year and a half. It started out as 8 hours worth of work, and we moved that to like a 25 hour position. And so we're continuing to work to like maintain that. But the way that he used his student voice to talk to Maine about how he was going to fulfill a practicum requirement. And that is how he was able to make connection with THEI. And so now, as I'm thinking about what needs to happen in Tennessee, I'm considering all that we have been able to learn with Maine and working with Matthew as a fellow. Currently, I've been working with Tennessee Department of Corrections to create a college mentor role. And that college mentor role currently is housed under TDOC, their policy. And so it's voluntary at this point. But my goal is by starting the conversation and being able to show how this is working, that we'll be able to build it out to a paid position.
Adrienne. Ramieka, how much are you all paying?
So currently for us, we try our best to mimic everything that is done on the main campus, our Towson campus. Is also extended or a reflection of what's done inside the facilities, which we call our Jessup campuses. So we have Campus 1 and Campus 2. Um, and on the main campus, we pay office assistants, student workers. There's two levels for the college. There's level 1 and there's level 2. Level 2 being the highest we could pay individuals that are on the main campus working inside of our offices, and that's at 17.50 an hour. We extend the same level to pay to our students inside, and currently we offer 10 hours a week at 17.50. If the students are still enrolled in classes, what we do is we allow the student to give us a schedule of their availability for each semester, and then we work around their schedule. And so far that has been working. But yeah, level 2, 17.50, because that is a reflection of what's currently being done on the main campus.
Thank you. So here you have it, two different programs, that are paying 17 and $25 respectively to folks who are incarcerated in a place where labor is exploited for free or 10, 15, 20 cents an hour, maybe $1 an hour if you're lucky. So there's also an undertone of addressing some of those inequities as well through opportunities like this. So some of those historical slave wage labor um, infrastructures that exist inside of these systems, this is also a great way to start addressing that. And it can all happen under the umbrella of education. And that was our strategy. I knew that if we would have approached this directly as an employment inequity, or something like that, then it might have not been received the same. But once we said that, this is a standard part of education, work-based learning opportunities, and sometimes these opportunities are paid, they're credit bearing, how can we look at it like that? It was a much more digestible concept for corrections to understand and be willing to make these opportunities available. So that was our strategy, right? I didn't want to come at this as an employment or labor exploitation, but more of a, hey, these are opportunities that are made to most people who, go through post-secondary education on the outside. So how can we extend those to folks on the inside? So critical piece of the strategy right there. So just thinking about talking points and how to approach the conversation. This was, our idea of how to do that. So all right, let's move over here to, let's see, benefits, considerations. All right. All right, so let's talk a little bit. We have about 5 to 7 more minutes, and then we'll start. We'll do like kind of an open conversation so we can start addressing some questions from the audience. But major challenges when thinking about implementation, what are some of the major challenges that you anticipated or that you've had to overcome throughout this process, conversations that you've had to have with corrections or just internally at your program, anything that comes up for you? I have a couple examples here, technology and funding are a couple obvious ones, but are there other things that you experienced as it relates to this?
I think if not done correctly, or just being really strategic about if you have plans to roll this out, and then in the way that in which you do, because it can dampen the morale amongst students. And I want to say that because of, and just highlight the term scarcity, right? And what that looks like for students that have been exploited and used, as Ved had mentioned a little earlier, um, uh, practically simply just kind of employed and used for free labor, when given an opportunity to make something as much as 17.50 an hour. um, it creates competition, hidden animosity, and so figuring out ways to keep the morale intact, figuring out ways to continue to build on the opportunity so that you are reaching more students, and um, investing in and management tools to deal with the conflict as it arises, and not just as a staff, but giving students those tools as well so that they can be empowered to exercise and use those tools whenever they feel like they need it. And so that has been of a challenge. And then for us, correctional staff, just kind of understanding what this opportunity is, um, and focusing on supporting the student as they're in this role, um, and realizing the benefit not just to the students' families, children's, the communities in which they return to, the society abroad, not even considering the ripple effect, but also how it improves the culture what's inside the prison, and how prisons also benefit from students have access to these type of experiences and opportunities. Yeah, so those two have been the main things that we've learned throughout this first year, and that we've had to take a step back from it, look at it, reorganize, re-strategize, and just figure out the most productive and gentle ways to address issues without continuing to dampen the morale. And sometimes some problems may even fix themselves. Um, but you want to hope that they would fix themselves, but if they don't, you want to be able to be there to offer the tools that students could use to help manage issues as such. But yeah, it's a scarcity issue for sure.
Yeah, I know when we were thinking about doing this opportunities, one of the biggest things that came up for me was that if there's 100 people on a cell block and only 5 people are getting these opportunities, right? How does the facility start to think about safety and security, right? Extortion, because people are in survival mode. People might have not had a dime put on their books for 10 years, and now there's 5 people on the cell block who are making 15, 20, $30 an hour or more. How do we deal with that and how do we address that? And so I originally, when we started thinking about these opportunities in the early phases, we wanted to really target um, residents who were housed in incentivized living units, honors dorms, earned living units, places like that, where the standard for, um, you know, the standard for behavior and things like this was different, right? Where people felt like they'd worked so hard to get some of these privileges and opportunities, but they wouldn't do anything to jeopardize them. And so that's one place that we started to think about this in terms of like where people are housed, how they're housed, what level unit they're at, and things like this. But as these things start to scale, these issues can become more imminent. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And then also, Ramika, thinking about how if people are getting paid 20, 30 plus an hour, how might this build resentment in correctional officers who might not be even getting paid that much, right? And so how do you deal with those power dynamics as well? So there's a lot of lingering things that we anticipated. And so as we, continue to build out the practices and try to ensure integrity in the work, we're very keen to making sure that we are in a position to be able to facilitate those conversations and address those issues as they come up. So don't want it to seem naive as we, start to think about this. So um, Adrienne, challenges for you?
Sure. I'm kind of connecting back to Stephen's question as well. Yes, there are challenges with implementing work-based learning, but the initial challenge that I saw when I was coordinating was tutoring. And so I was able to see that for high school equivalency, that TDOC, they were hiring folks to support those students. But what was happening in the college setting is um, students were just naturally using the cohort model. And so it became the question of, well, why can't we just implement college level tutors to tutor amongst their community, their college going community as well? And so that started in a few facilities, and then it became a discussion of this is actually working. It's been working informally. Let's make it formal. Um, let's formalize it. And so it was really a discussion around retention, withdrawal, student stressors that are impacting withdrawals, and a lot of it was around needing peer support within their college going community. And so the DOC was willing to play off of what they were already doing for me to then say, okay, can I write the description for for what a college mentor position would be?
Mhm.
And so then, like Ramika, we did the resume, the cover letter, we implemented a panel style interview, and all those that interviewed were excellent. And so that goes to the competitiveness, it is high, the sense of lack is high, but more times than not, students are invested in being ambassadors and seeing the longevity of what prison education can be. And so it becomes, we're equally invested in this, and we know y'all have to select someone today. And we're willing to see how this goes, not just for ourselves as individuals, but the community. So I can echo that around like the sense of lack for the college mentor position. We were allowed, I said earlier, we have associate degrees and a bachelor's program, and so they allowed for us to have two to create the job for two folks. So someone who is complete has completed the associate degree and someone who has completed the bachelor's degree. And that process is they're starting as July 1. So we're actively doing that now. But additional challenge I'll say is really around the partnership and finally finding the language to strategically talk about these things. And I think Ramika talked about like morale can become low amongst students, but it also can become low around the stakeholders, the carceral staff, the leadership. How do I broach the subject with you so that you can be fully on board and it makes sense to you to increase lab hours or lab access for so more folks are able to do work beyond just the core coursework for a semester.
Thank you. That's the piece that I think is even this issue around capacity and space on the correction side, like where, having correctional officers create a space where somebody can work quietly, or letting them in a computer lab, or needing, a correctional officer to have to stand in a space while working. And this can be, it can take hours of time. And um, but it's nice to hear that again, it's happening. And our goal was to start with pilots. Like, we're not asking the facility to do, hey, we want 20 people to be able to do this. It's like, hey, how can we figure out how to let one person do it? And that's kind of been our model, is like finding an entry point, um, not coming at it too big that's going to scare corrections more than they may already have fear for anything, and right sizing it. And meeting them where they're at, like what would it we ask the question, what would it take to pilot this opportunity? What are the conditions? And then we do everything we can to make those conditions, possible. And we've re-granted money to organizations for them to host currently incarcerated interns. And we under the condition that, hey, a percentage of this money that we re-grant needs to go directly to the incarcerated student, right, for this internship and paid for their labor. We'll do a rapid fire on the last one, just in a nutshell, insights or lessons learned that you'd like to share with others here, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I'm so not good at taking notes while listening because I'm like so engaged and paying attention. I wish I had somebody else to take notes while I was like facilitating, because I'm really just like the wheels are turning as I listen to you all and processing this stuff, and it's kind of hard to take notes at the same time. But yeah, just insights, lessons learned, key takeaways for folks who are interested in trying to pilot something like this in their states or facilities.
I'll jump in. I was able to talk to Matthew, our research fellow, on yesterday, and he left me with this, and I really wanted to share it with y'all. He said, education gave me my life back. It let me dictate what my life would mean. I did not need to be ashamed anymore, but proud. Work-based learning gave me control of my life back. And that for me, I think echoes what Victoria was saying in the beginning around mattering. That has been like the larger takeaway for me. We started the conversation talking about these opportunities were birthed out of student inquiry. I'm reminded of proposals that students have written and boldly sent in. And I think they have the keys, they have the knowledge. And it really is a matter of, if you have the privilege, the power to bring everyone to the table to make something happen, it is an opportunity for someone to regain control. And so that has been insight for me that has encouraged me to flex my courage muscle. A lot of it is courage because these things are just getting started, are pilots, like you said, Ved. So that has been the thing for me, being willing to sit at the table and have the conversation and welcome the thoughts of our most important stakeholder, the students inside.
Mhm. Thank you.
I think I'm gonna also just lead from an experience in which I've gained, or insight that I've gained directly from a student throughout this experience. First and foremost, I mentioned it earlier, the ripple effect, right? And so when we're doing this work, we think about servicing the student or the students, and we don't stop to think about the various ways in which this is reaching other people indirectly, right? And just a little bit about a conversation. The very same person that proposed this idea to us graduated. She wrote a senior thesis on emerging adults, and sentencing around emerging adults and what that looks like in a carceral setting. Um, And when we first paid her first lump sum of money, and she's been incarcerated for a very, very long time. When we first gave her a lump sum of money, she came to me and she said, do you know, she has two sisters, and she said, do you know I make more money than my sister? Right. And I said, wow. And her sister's obviously home. And she said, and I was able to send her money to help her pay her bill. Right. And just thinking about her work inside and how most often um, families and friends are sending money inside the facilities to care for people that are incarcerated. It's rare that students have the opportunity to extend that same courtesy or gesture to their loved ones. And so it felt really good to know that as we're helping take care of her, she is using the resources to help take care of her family. And that's an extension of this work. Um, And with her second lump sum of money, she came to me and she said, I can finally afford to pay for a lawyer now, ready to go home. And I think just being tied to that, knowing that after decades of incarceration, she now has the financial means to support and advocate for freedom, right? And just thinking about access and what that looks like, and how people would be able to use these resources not only to improve themselves and their condition, but to love and care for the community that they're a part of. It's just a gift that keeps giving, in my opinion. And yeah, that's what I've learned, is that it's not individual work, it's not a group work. It's bigger than just the individual student body. So it extends far beyond that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rameka and Adrienne. Um, I think the last piece that you mentioned is one of the driving forces that motivated the Alliance and me and us to really push this forward, is thinking about um, the opportunity for folks to send money home. Because a term that's not really known a lot, but is a term called network impoverishment, and that's basically, for people who are living in poverty, knowing that everybody in the circle, nobody really has the resources, and so when somebody's incarcerated, it's a burden financially on the family, and yeah, the people who are in the free world are sending money in for somebody to buy food, but also now, if you have a single parent household on the outside, you have one less form of income coming in. So thinking about the opportunity for folks to send money home to pay for school, pay a utility bill, pay rent, pay for their kid's first car, pay a medical bill, things like this, give people the opportunity to feel connected, stay connected to their community. So when they come home, they're not returning to something that they feel like they've been completely removed from. They're returning home to a community that they've been involved in, they've contributed to, and not to use criminogenic terms, but that'd be considered pro-social, right? Giving people that opportunity. And then imagine being able to come home and not have to be dependent on the system, which is a term that's coined by many, to depend on, the system and the government for subsidized housing, food stamps and things like that, but being able to come home and pay for your own housing, pay for your own transportation. Um, and your own food and things like this, right? So there's something empowering about that. And we know that, wraparound service centers, reentry centers, parole offices, et cetera, they run out of resources quickly. So trying to get on the list to get support for housing, you can end up waiting 2 years for that in many places. Um, and trying to get a hotel voucher or a housing voucher, those can take months. And time is critical. So if you have to wait 6 months or 3 months to get housed, you know, those are 3 months that can go by really fast. And by that time, a lot of times, I mean, the recidivism rate in the first year that's when it's the highest. If you make it to year two and year three, then it starts to taper quickly. But that first year is critical. So, being able to come home with the financial resources and then being able to come home with a resume to help you find a job, is also critical. I've worked with over 1,000 people coming home from incarceration, and of that 1,000, I would say 90% of them had nothing, no resume, not a dollar to their name. And us at a little reentry center was tasked with triaging this stuff, and it was just, like drinking from a water hose. So these are opportunities to address some of these issues from the inside before people come home. And if you want to think about the economic implications more broadly, imagine if states didn't have to allocate a significant portion of their budget to nonprofits and reentries trying to triage reentry, right? But people are able to come home with the resources they need. Therefore, these reentry centers don't need, the same level of resources, or the reentry centers now have more resources to dedicate to people who have more intensive needs. So they're not having to stretch themselves so thin. So the implications are broad. Um, and happy to chat more about that. But I know we have about 20 minutes to open it up for, I'd like to, invite the audience to ask questions, make comments, anything related to how you're thinking about doing this at your program and how Adrienne, Ramieka, or myself might be able to give some insights on how to make that a reality. So feel free to come off camera, off mute, and just ask. You can drop it in the chat too, but you could just ask straight up too.
Yeah, I got a quick question. Thanks a lot, Adrienne and Ramika, for your insight. Can you give us just a brief description or discussion on how you determine how much money, let's say it's a $20 an hour wage, how you worked with the mostly with the corrections to determine how much goes to the student, how much goes to all the different pieces. I've heard discussions about if they owe restitution to start covering some of that, but how that breakdown has worked for you guys.
If I can also share some of this, Ramika and Adrian, if you all haven't had to address any of those types of challenges or haven't been confronted with those, I can also speak to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I haven't encountered any issues around that so far. Students that have been paid 100% of their wages. Um, they have not paid anything out to DOC or any other entity. Um, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question. Sorry.
Yes, I haven't had that experience either in the scenario where we're paying the fellow $25. He's incarcerated in Maine. And so what I know about Maine, they do require that like 15% go to like room and board. But THEI, we're not a part of that. We just chose our wage for a fellow position. So Ved would probably be better suited to speak on it.
Yeah, I can speak on that. I know that a handful of states will, they take a percentage for, whether it's room and board or something else. And some of the states, it actually goes to the general fund in the state. It can also go to indigent. So there's models that this money can go to something charitable, like a percentage can go to something charitable, which is how we started to pitch it as well, thinking about restorative practices and victim services and things like that. Because if people on the outside are like, hey, how come people on the inside are getting these jobs and I can't even get a job? We thought about, okay, how can we give the opportunity for folks who are incarcerated to say, hey, I want a percentage of my pay to go to this charitable cause or organization to kind of offset um, some of that that kickback that might come from like public PR related stuff. Um, so that's one way. I know, and also, again, some states will take 25%, 15, 20%. And what we did is we calculated those cost, and then we subsidized an increase in pay to make sure that the person actualized fully. So if we wanted somebody to actualize $25 an hour and that state was going to take 25% of their pay, then we would increase that pay to make sure that they, in the end, still got $25 an hour, right? So those are some ways that it's done. I also do know that people have been able to pay into their child support as well as fines, fees, restitution. I believe Victoria was actually able to pay off all of her fines, fees, restitution as a result of her opportunity here. So I don't know if it was her wages were garnished per se. I know some states will do that. If you have fines, fees, restitution, and you start getting money put on your books, they will take a percentage of that. Some places will take 100% of it until your fines, fees, restitution are paid. Some places will take 10, 15, 20%. I think it varies state to state. But I do know that it's calculated in different ways.
I have a quick question too. Thank you everyone for sharing your experiences. And sorry I keep waving. It's I'm in Europe and it's getting dark. My question is, when you were talking about kind of navigating possible tensions with some folks making a lot more money than others. I'm thinking of our program, and one of our programs, there is not like an honors yard or an honors dorm, and we're on a very active yard. Um, so I'm trying to think of how it could look there, and I'm really interested to hear what risk management strategies were you able to put in place, or what did you think of?
This is a very tricky one. And it's honestly something that I'm not going to act like we've been able to fully address. Again, we specifically tried to target places that had these, you know, designated dorms to deal
Mm.
with this. Um, I do think that there are some strategies to think about. Trip, you actually dropped something in the chat that actually speaks to one of our strategies for kind of mitigating the amount of money, that somebody's making and how that can be perceived by the rest of the population. And so um, we talked with a few departments of corrections around, right, if somebody's getting paid $2,000 a month, right, that only a certain percentage can go on their books at a time, right? Like only $300 can go on their books at a time. So that, in some places, when people get money put on their books, like people will be like, let me see that receipt. Let me see how much money you got put on your books, things like extortion, right? And so things like that can kind of curb that. So it looks like when if somebody asks you how much money did you get put on your books, you show them a receipt and it's just $300, right? Um, and then, and so after that 300 is worn down, then it gets replenished with 300 more, just automatically. There's also some setups where some of the money isn't fully actualized, where some corrections will say, hey, we don't want that much money going to somebody directly. So they'll put some in like a freeze account, a savings account, your reentry account, right? So 30% of your income goes into this reentry account that you can't touch until you're going to be released or until you're close to release. And that's for people who have sentences that are, probably 10 years or less, right?
Mhm.
So that's another strategy. And then this is just more um, kind of an abstract strategy, but I would say just concealing how much you're getting paid, like not walking around saying I'm making, $25 an hour, et cetera, et cetera. Being, just vigilant of your surroundings too. I know that's not like a really concrete strategy, but I think it's one that can be helpful. Conversely, while I do think extortion can be a threat, I do think um, letting people know that there are opportunities like this also increases engagement in education. People who may have not cared about education at all because they had this myth that they wouldn't get paid. Now they see somebody getting paid and they'll sign up for that class, right? And I know a lot of people didn't, when I was doing time, there were people who were in prison for 10 years before they signed up for a college class, right? And it's because they heard that this education was leading to something. So, um, I don't personally have any like really deep strategies yet. We've only been doing this for about 2.5 years, and so it's been really successful, and we're just really holding space to try to build, more infrastructure around this. But I don't have like any direct strategies. So I know that I also a little bit. I get anxious thinking about corrections officers having resentment too. I think about the Stanford Prison Project and just how power can be wielded and them seeing somebody with, 5, 10, $15,000 on their books, and knowing that this officer themselves may only have a GED. They may also be living at the poverty line. They may also be working at a prison where the only economy is the prison and a corner store, and the economy, is destitute of resources. That stuff is real. And it's not, you know, like these correctional officers are also living in very dire situations many times too. So acknowledging that reality. Um,
I think what we currently do at GPEP is that we hold two seats at both facilities for officers that want to learn, and they go through the same enrollment process as students, um, and uh, because what we were getting initially was pushback around why students deserve this opportunity. So we thought it was best that, as Ved just mentioned, that most of these officers live within a miles radius from these institutions, and they also are just above, on, or below the poverty line. So really taking that in consideration too, because even though they are correctional officers, they are a part of the same communities in which most of our students are from. So extending that opportunity just seemed like a no-brainer. But my thought would be, in the same way that we extend the opportunity for education, maybe as they begin to enroll in college classes, we could also extend work-based learning opportunities for those officers, so we could continue to hold space for them as well, so that they too have the opportunity to grow and find their fit and do all the things, right? So it's just a thought, but yeah, it's all about access and just creating space for people to have the opportunity.
Turi is a super, super difficult question though, like super complex, and something that I grapple with and it's always eating my mind. So, if I come up with some more strategies, or we come across people who have some really good ones, I'll should make sure to share those out with you.
Thank you so much.
I, I do see Andrea's hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ramika and Adrienne and Ved. This has been really great. And Ramika, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I've been talking with Meredith at GPEP about how Goucher has done this, because we want to do the same thing. And we just started a fellowship program this summer. It'll actually go into effect in August with our three graduates. We have three graduates that are still incarcerated, and we have been thinking a lot about this and working with Danielle and trying to figure out how to do this in the right way. And we got approval. So I'm really excited because we have students who, remain incarcerated and they stay in the school. Like, they have access to technology still because they stay on as volunteer mentors and tutors. So we really want to try to honor them and give them this opportunity. And hopefully one day we can open it up to students in general, but we're starting this way, and I'm hoping that this will not create that animosity and that you describe, because it does exist in other ways for other reasons. And we were really concerned about that, which is why we also, are targeting graduates of the program first for this. But I'd love to know a little bit about, especially, this is a question for you, Ved. If the Alliance is thinking about professional development opportunities for incarcerated workers who are within these programs, who are doing internships, fellowships, work-based learning, for them to all come together in one space to, participate in a webinar just like this, because we are thinking a little bit about professional development skills. So we're going to be looking for webinars and online opportunities for them to, get more skills beyond just working with us.
So
I feel like the Alliance is the group to do it.
yeah, so I mean, I would just like to name, I mean, professional development and soft skills are just something that gets, I can't say enough about that. And that's why these opportunities are great. Trip, I know you host a field cohort as well that gives people who are formerly incarcerated, professional development opportunities and walks them through a cohort year long, gives them leadership training and all of this. Um, so I mean, I just want to name that that's something we care deeply about. We care about like student advisory councils, which is something we're about to tackle nationally too, to make sure that those are spaces where students have an opportunity to have a voice, where they have an opportunity to understand how to navigate leadership. Um, so the Alliance is invested in creating these opportunities. And also as a part of, the work-based learning, we encourage, there's an employer section that talks about mentorship, and supervision and making sure that whoever's hosting people who are currently incarcerated, that they have the capacity to do it, to provide the support that's needed. Um, And then the soft skills, that's one of the biggest things that we see a gap in. I think the hard skills are great and those can be learned by almost anybody, but the soft skills, when you're removed from society, you just you lose that because you're in an institution that has a whole different set of standards and norms. And so, yeah, so I don't think I answered your question. Can you ask just like it a little bit more elaborate so I can address all of it fully?
No, you sort of did. I mean, I'm going to be on the lookout for more opportunities for our fellows to get professional development skills and to learn from others across the country. Like sometimes our students feel like they're the only people in the universe in college, in prison. So connecting them to like a network of others doing internships and fellowships and work it is something that I'm going to be looking for like in the coming months.
Yeah, I'll say that we definitely want to, I mean, Trip, you put it in the chat as well, the ISC Incarcerated Scholars Conference. But I mean, part of our goal with the Incarcerated Scholars Conference is to connect folks on the inside to folks on the outside and vice versa. Because they are a part of our community, just because they're displaced in a different place doesn't mean they aren't. Um, and so finding ways to engage people on the inside and make that available publicly is critical. And we're looking at ways to even make, the ISC able to be streamed inside of facilities. So people
Mm,
who are in facilities across the US can kind of watch and engage and see what other scholars are
mm,
doing. And one of the issues that we've had around this is inter-facility communication is really difficult. So it's hard sometimes to allow people, even across states, but even within a state, going through victim services and the public information office can be difficult, uh, um, hurdle to make it through. But one of the ways we've been able to do that is say that there's no two-way communication in some of the calls. We'll host it where it's webinar only. But we've done a lot of public facing stuff with people who are incarcerated, and it's some places they're like, you can only have their first name shown or their last name shown, or you can't have their face on the screen at all. It can only be their voice and they have to be off camera. So we are working to navigate all of those pieces, those logistical pieces to make the voices inside more accessible and present. So, and we'll definitely be doing that. So, and I'm nice to know, Trip, that a student advisory council resources coming out because we want to put some national precedent around that.
Yeah, and I also want to highlight that FICGN is on the call. Shout out to Terrell. Thanks, Trip. But I wanted to just say that they are also available as a resource for students that are home. I don't know how far their reach is in terms of reaching those that are inside, but that is also if you're looking for community resources where you can meet, exchange resources and information of such. That's also a great group to be a part of. So even just connecting with FICGN and then gauging how far their reach is inside the facility, or maybe working with them to see if that is possible in their end. But in addition to the ISC, FICGN is also on the call.
Yeah, and the modeling piece is everything. Like I wasn't a believer in anything that anybody would tell me on the inside. I might not even listen to my own mom sometimes, but like if formerly incarcerated people came into the facility and get talk to us, I would be like, oh, I can see it now. Like it makes sense. But I wouldn't listen to the officers, I wouldn't listen to anybody, but having that modeling and seeing people who were formerly incarcerated doing things in the world was what I needed to see. That was the proof. Um, Other than that, it was really hard for me for anything that anybody was saying for me to feel compelled by it. So, and for rightful reason. I mean, people who have records find it's hard to find the job. It's hard to see the future. But when you have a whole coalition of folks who've gone through it, that's extremely compelling. When you see a Terrell Blunt, when you see a Stan Andrees, when you see a Noel Vest, right, who are doing all kinds of stuff, not just working in the prison education field, but like doctors, lawyers, like these, different professionals. It's everything. Um, so I want to definitely put the Alliance in a position to lift those voices up. I know we have a couple more minutes before these breakouts close out. Any other questions from programs about piloting or just implementing work-based learning or what the I'm curious just like what the conversations have looked like in your states, if you've even tried to broach them or anything like that. Nurdine, come on out.
How you doing? I'm located in Boston with the Boston College Prison Education Program, and I just recently graduated. I started inside, playing on the first cohort, and then being the first one to graduate on campus. And just we didn't have like internet access. We didn't have no type of work-based learning, but just by sitting down, hearing like all the strategies and things that just from my experience being incarcerated at a young age and just going through the system, just seeing some of the things that might work and might, and I know that most likely, at least in Massachusetts, that it won't work. It's just like it's good information that we're having these conversations. So like now that I recently graduated, I work with my director, Patrick Conway, to implement this, try to get this work-based learning because is I feel like it's essential. And like how you brought up the fact that you're able to come home and not rely on assistance. And just me being home only 3 years, I just found out it took me 3 years to just find housing. I just got the notification today. And some people don't have that support that I had from my family and just saving money before 3, 4 years before I even came home off of the institutional jobs. If I had this type of job or this work-based learning, I would have been able to help family members and things like that. So I just feel like just trying to implement some of the things is just like what will work. I feel like in my institution in Massachusetts would be like a housing unit. Like they just created a educational unit, so they just house everybody that's in like carpentry, welding, school, all on one block. And now those are originally the highest paid people in the institution was people that was in welding, carpentry, and things like that. And it does create like resentment and competition and things like that, but it also incentivizes people to do good to get into these programs.
Mm.
So it could always lead. It's like a thin line, but majority of the time when there's like a block and people outside looking in, they find a way to try to get in. They don't find a way to try to tear it down. And that's what I feel like the DOC is scared of to create like conflict, competition with one another. But that's like the difficult part that we're having in Boston, at least when I speak to my director and he speaks to the DOC, it's just like they're fair. So just having access to other institutions that do it this work like Maine. Maine's not too far from Massachusetts. Just now we have communications with Maine and just going there and able to see how they're doing it is a good thing. Now we can show them that Maine's doing it, Tennessee's doing it, Maryland's doing it. So now it just shows proof of concept. So I feel like at least when one state is able to do it perfectly or close to perfect, now I think other states will get on board, at least in Mass, at least.
Mhm. Thanks, Nardine. And that's the goal that we have at here at the Alliance from the national perspective is trying to engage a national audience and build enough of a foundation of people who are doing this that would then in turn, alleviate or mitigate some of the anxieties that could come up from corrections and them not feeling like they're the first or the only people doing this, but them being connected to a broader network of people that are doing it. And that's what, the Alliance really takes seriously is building out like a stronger network where if somebody's in a state and they're like, oh, there's no way I can do this. I don't know who to talk to. I can say, oh, well, here's three other people that I know that are doing it. Maybe your commissioner can talk to this commissioner, or maybe this warden can talk to that warden. Um, that's where we've seen a lot of success. So,
I have one more question too that I wanted to ask the panel. I think, would you say if the work-based learning is implemented, how does that transition to an opportunity? How does that transition to an opportunity when they are released? Does it end there, or does it continue, or is there like resources they can access to continue having a job, or the job ends there? Do they take the job home with them? Like,
yeah, we had one person who started on the inside and we continued their fellowship once they were released. They're actually still with us, Amy Ramirez. She started on the inside and we continued her fellowship once she was released. Our model right now, because we want to continue to like build a knowledge base is having, a couple year-long fellowships and then we cycle to offer them to new folks that are coming in, at least as our infrastructure is now. And we try to have some overlap. So the new interns or the new fellows, they will overlap 3 months with the people who were going out.